Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Get Into It with Gila. I'm Gila Glassberg, your host, registered dietitian, and intuitive eating counselor. And today I have on again Shira Fruchter. Hi, Shira.
Hi,
How are
so
you?
good to be here.
I'm so happy that you're
Great.
here. I love having you on.
I love being here.
Okay, good. Okay, so let's get started. So today we decided to cover the topic of what it's like for clients to come into a therapy session and feel anxious about using their time wisely, which I've just found out
Yes,
today is very common.
extremely.
Like extremely, like
Yes.
every client you see in a day, or like 70%, 50%, or you just hear it a lot.
I know. I think that people are just there's this thing about using your time in therapy, like how
Okay.
to make sure you use every minute and you have your agendas and you have your goals and is it worth my money and is it worth my time? And it's a lot of I find there's a lot of stress around like making sure you milk the session for what it's worth.
But I'm sure that makes the session less like productive. Does it?
That's the irony. That is the irony that you could spend so much time wondering if we're going to use the session on the right things and the right topics and did we use our session well and have we been making progress? And then sometimes that takes the whole session. So
But is that important to cover from the therapist's perspective? Because there's obviously like other, is there underlying stuff going on, or is it just that like therapy is expensive and not everybody values therapy, so it is kind of hard to know if we value it?
totally. Meaning I think there's a lot of, issues at play. I think therapy is very expensive and it's money is a real thing and people really are paying for this. And that it's a very, I know the prices in America are way higher than they are in Israel, but yeah, it's definitely very expensive. And I think the concept of therapy is very vague and it is very hard to measure and operationalize change.
Hmm.
So people are very confused. Like, is this working? What's the best way to use my time? Am I getting anywhere? Am I seeing progress? So I think it's a combination of not necessarily, being, completely attuned to what therapy really is and the fact that it is very expensive. Yeah.
So what is like, I guess like from a therapist perspective, what is it that um like do you measure people's results? Do you like have a yardstick for like, telling a client like, oh, you really reached that goal? I always wonder that actually, like even for me, like because I don't weigh people, it's not as tangible. For me, at least, I see progress just because I see like somebody's not as scared about something or so as intense, but they
That's
don't see it
nice.
as progress.
They don't.
Maybe if I bring it to their attention, but like it's just less measurable. So I guess that's more stressful.
Right. No, it is very stressful. Listen, I think it is very important to set goals and allow people to understand what they're going to do in the therapy room and over the course of the work. Um, and not only to set goals, but I tell a lot of my supervisees that it's really critical that the goals that people set are goals that we really can reach.
Hmm.
So I think that the the actual activity and the effort put into setting goals in and of itself is a very therapeutic process because it shows us as clinicians what are our clients asking for. If
Hmm.
I have someone very type A and very perfectionist and rigid and scheduled, tell me my goal is to be really laid back. I wouldn't call that a goal. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, up to the therapist to really be able to be honest and be able to say, like, let's look at that. Like that, we're not going to really be able to change a nature,
Hmm.
and an entire wiring. Um, and so that would be a very big thing for me to look at the person's goals and to be able to somehow concretize that. So when people say, be less anxious, have a better self-esteem. Those goals are too vague.
Hmm.
Everybody wants to be less anxious and have a better self-esteem.
Right.
But the question is, what does that mean for you? And again, I think allowing people to explore what they mean when they're coming into therapy and what their hope is, what they're wishing for is so critical.
Hmm.
Like, and I ask a client, what would it mean to you to be less anxious? Teach me about anxiety for you,
Hmm.
without best. What does the anxious part look like for you? And how does it manifest? And we can get some kind of, concrete understanding what anxiety is or how low self-esteem, shows up in their life, then perhaps we can make goals that we are, are attainable.
Hmm.
And I think that does calm a lot of the the stress around therapy. We can make it feel like it's something we could actually accomplish.
Right.
We're just talking about low self-esteem. We're just talking about, anxiety. So that's definitely one of the things that I think helps.
I'm thinking, like, as you're talking, I'm thinking like why don't we know what when we call a therapist and we make a session with them, like shouldn't we know? Like we should know, like I'm calling this therapist because we don't know. I guess we don't know. We're like, I'm calling this therapist because I keep dating guys that are like really mean to me. Right. So that's
Right.
like, that's the therapist is going to be like, oh, you're dating guys that are really mean. I was just listening to the podcast, Dear Therapist. I don't know if you listen to it, but do you listen to it by Lori Gottlieb and Guy Winch? You know what I'm talking about?
No, no,
It's a really good
no, I
podcast.
didn't hear it.
It's really good. So like because she was talking about like dating guys that were bad for her. So that's why I brought that up. But like
Oh, okay. Good example.
they're coming to you, but they're trying to understand why they're doing that, right? So you're like exploring like the codependent client or like the
Exactly.
um
Exactly.
right. So they
No,
don't even
100%.
really know. They don't, that's the thing. When they come to you and you say, what are your goals for therapy? The real answer is they don't really know.
Right. So I think like, that's what I'm saying. I think contracting goals is really a part of the process of where we begin the healing work of therapy,
Right.
which is, well, what can we truly accomplish here? We definitely, as everyone knows, can't change anybody.
Right.
So I'm dating a lot of mean guys. We can't make guys not mean,
Right.
but what's that about for you?
Right.
And the IFS famous U-turn is really helping people see themselves. So many clients come to therapy wanting to change their spouse. That's the classic, And I understand so many times people come to therapy if you're married to someone that has an addiction or married to someone that, underwent a lot of trauma or married to someone that's struggling with depression.
Right.
It's really hard to live with that,
Right.
and there's this like unconscious wish that therapist can somehow make it go away or make
Right.
it better.
Yeah.
And I wish we can. I wish
Right.
we can.
What is this
Uh,
IFS famous U-turn? I don't know what it is.
okay, so good. I thought I mentioned in the last podcast. So what the U-turn basically is in life we often look outwards. So most people when they're talking about an issue, it's about someone else.
Hmm.
Did this to me, she did this to me, she's, messed up or he's messed up or he's mean. Um, he triggered me, very outward. We really want to look at where it's touching us inside. So we do what we call a U-turn, which is turning it back to me. Where is it touching me? Because two people can go through the same exact event. And for one, it's very intense. And for someone else, it didn't really touch them so much.
Right.
So we say if it's intense, it's yours. If something is intense for you, it might be both of yours, but it's touching you somewhere.
If it's intense,
So
it's yours.
yeah,
Okay.
it's intense, it's yours.
Okay.
So that's a big IFS terms phrase. So, we have this with everything. We have, your mother-in-law comes to visit you and you're triggered because she said something. If it's intense, it's yours.
Interesting.
So where is it touching you? Or your child's, why is one of your children, get you more activated than another child? Where is that child touching you? Why
Hmm.
when that where's it touching you? When dated that guy, where's it touching you? And I think again, another way we can really make change is by looking at ourselves because we can't change anyone else. But
Right.
once it's empowering to see where it's touching you because then you can actually do something about it.
Right. And first of all, I remember when there's hysteria, there's
If
history.
it's hysterical, it's historical. Yes.
It's hysterical historical. I really like that one.
Yes.
Um, yeah, but I think what another thing is that's like coming up for me is that like there used to be a lot of stigma with therapy, right? Now it's like definitely better, but it's there still is stigma. Like the same way we would go to the doctor when we're having like physical issues, we would go to like a therapist when we're having like emotional issues, but there is still like not like it's not like everybody, goes to the doctor the same way everyone goes to a therapist, unfortunately.
Right.
But the interesting thing about that is that when somebody who actually goes to therapy is willing to work on themselves, usually, because it's the people
You
that
hope.
don't go to you hope, but I'm saying the people who for sure won't go to therapy for sure won't like own it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very hard. Yeah. The people who won't go to therapy, it's very, very hard. I think that's a lot of the the downfalls to marriage is when one spouse refuses to go for therapy. Like if the
Right.
person's not gonna take the bait and say, I want to work on myself, I want to take responsibility, I want to see how I contribute, it's very hard to really, have a partner to work with in a dynamic. Yes, one spouse can change the dance and change the dynamic, But if both people are willing and ready to do their work and to see how they contribute, it's so much easier when a person will knock over therapy. That's why if there's no will in therapy, it's very hard to make change.
Right. You have
Sometimes
to
people
want it.
come.
Right.
Why when you force a teenager to go to therapy, it's not very effective. Or here in Israel for the year, when people are forcing girls to come for therapy, it's not as effective because they don't want to be there.
Right.
And the most experienced therapist in the world, the best therapist in the world, the top expert in the world, when they do is someone does not want to get help.
Right.
But yeah, the opposite is also true. Someone that comes and really is ready and wants and willing and open, there's so much that could be done.
Right. Right. Do you think that everybody needs therapy?
No, I don't think everybody needs
No?
therapy.
Really?
No, I don't think everyone needs therapy. I think therapy is a luxury,
Yeah.
for some people. And I think that anyone would benefit and enjoy, therapy, because to get 50 full minutes, just talk about yourself
Right.
with no interruptions, no phone calls, no texts. The
Yeah.
therapist can't go to the bathroom.
Right.
The therapist barely blow their nose. I'm
Right.
saying you have
Yeah.
50 full minutes. That's very rare.
Yes, I
So
know. You're right.
when we slow down and hear ourselves talk and hear what's going on and listen inward, it's an amazing way to improve and to grow and to just gain insight and clarity to be the better people, to then therefore be better spouses and better friends and better siblings and better parents and better children. So need is a strong word. I don't think everybody needs therapy, but I think anyone can benefit from therapy. And I think for many people, therapy is a luxury,
So
that
do
they
you,
don't want to give it help.
so when you like in your first session or first few sessions, you create goals with clients, does that
Yeah.
always minimize the stress about using the time wisely?
So no, it's a good question. Not always. There is definitely this. There are certain people, and again, I wouldn't say it's everybody, but those of you out there that are listening, when it's you. That
Right.
feeling of, oh my gosh, well, how am I going to use my time? I'm here. So much is weighing on me. Which thing should I talk about? What's the
Right.
most important to talk about?
Yeah.
Are we following a path? Do we pick up from last week? Every time the
Right.
session ends, say we're going to pick up with it, but then we don't.
Yes.
That all of that.
Oh my gosh.
So,
So I'm just gonna share this that I went to therapy today, and that's what we were talking. That's why we decided to do this. So like I have been seeing this therapist for like, I don't know, like 4 years, like a really long time. And it was, I think I started seeing her maybe longer than 4 years, well, after my mom died. And obviously when I was seeing, and then I think I saw her for a full year every single week. And that was like really necessary to help me cope. But then I didn't feel like I had to go every single week. But that was really stressful for me because I'm like, should I go every week? Should I go every other week? Should I just, that's the problem also. Should I call when I'm stressed? But what if she doesn't have a session? Then I have to wait. And the
exactly.
session comes and I'm not stressed anymore. Is it still there? Should I bring it up? You know?
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Everybody wants to go when it's urgent. Everybody wants to go when they're in that bad mood,
Right.
when they have that fight,
Right.
when they're feeling depressed. Everybody
Right.
wants to go for therapy then, of course, for sure, for sure. And it is very hard when you come in those sessions and you sit down and you're like, wow, I've got nothing today.
Right.
Everything just so fine. Why am I here? And
Right.
sometimes the best sessions come from those times.
Yeah.
Yes, when everything's quiet. And one of the things we do in IFS is we can look at any part anytime because we really
Right.
can, in our mind's eye, almost see the triggers.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody, had a really hard day on Sunday and they see they see the therapist on Thursday and they worked it out since then and they're back to themselves and they're fine. We can go back to Sunday in their
Mm-hmm.
mind's eye and say, hey, can you just check in with Sunday? And
Mm-hmm.
you see yourself, what was happening, and how do you feel towards then? And then we have much more space actually. We'll say in IFS language, we're not blended with that part.
Mm-hmm.
So we have more self, we have more space to then look at what was going on Sunday, meet it, and have more perspective so that we could hopefully do it better the next time because we're always smarter after.
Right.
We're so much wiser.
Right. So something that you said before about like where is it going to start? Are we going to pick up from next time? Is that like a thing that like you want to pick up from next time as a
Well, I
therapist?
think there's different, yeah, I think there's different styles of clinicians. I really think that. I personally, I don't believe in like a shita of picking up from last time.
Mm-hmm.
And, anyone that works with me knows that I very much just begin wherever the person's ready.
Right.
Because I really feel like when a whole week goes by, so much has happened, so much has
Right.
transpired, so many encounters. I have no idea where the person wants to go.
Right.
If I were to say, okay, last time we were talking about your mother and how she's overly critical, or,
Right.
we're talking about part of you that's very depressed. To me, over the week, so much could have happened, and I
Right.
might be missing something.
Right.
So I prefer to ask the client, where are you at? How do you want to use your time today?
Right.
That feels for me feels more attuned. And then sometimes people say, we go back to last week.
Right.
You check where were we at last week? I always jot down at the end of sessions just where we're at so that I have kind of, a note to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I'm so happy to go back to last week. I'm happy for it to come from them.
Right.
And there's this feeling that clients sometimes have, like they're coming in and like, do the work for me. Therapist,
Right.
like, fix it, make it better. Here I am.
Right.
Hey,
Right. Right. Right.
start. And
Right.
it just doesn't work that way.
Right.
It really that way. And we're not like expert magic people, and if people
Yeah.
are really around themselves, like there's really no magic, and I think the ability to tune into ourselves and be able to really be able to say, this needs my attention today, or this is what's really, kind of loud for me. That is so much the process of change.
Mm-hmm.
Because our ability to say what's going on.
Right.
And that's our automatic pilot. And that's how we make better choices. So the tuning in that we do in the therapy room of sitting down and taking a moment and pausing and saying, okay, where am I at? What's going on? Let me get my bearings, take my emotional temperature. Is the kind of thing we want to do in general in life,
Right. Right.
when it's coming up in life, when with our family members or with friends, and we're feeling something's moving us. So we want to be able to stop and say, hey, what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
I think we're learning that language in the therapy room.
Right. Like I'm assuming one of the goals of therapy for you with your clients is like that eventually they'll like your clients will graduate, like you'll give them the tools and that they could do it on their own.
So definitely, I think that the language for me, the language of IFS is a huge goal. Those of you who know IFS have an understanding of that. If you don't know IFS, I would say that the ability to meet our problems compassionately and to meet ourselves kindly is really like, I guess, like the most basic, you know, foundation, I think, to change, because we can't change when we hate something. Like change does not come through hate.
Mm-hmm.
Change really comes through love. The same way, like a child that's being very hard or struggling, if we hate them, that's not going to motivate them to change.
Right.
It's like everyone knows you have to love your child in order to really help give that foundation for change.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look inwards or at our problems, at our issues, at our struggles, at our triggers, we almost always meet them with hate and with
Mm-hmm.
dislike and
Right.
with criticism and with contempt. Like we're not kind to ourselves. I'm sure you see this. People bring in their issues and
They hate
they're
themselves.
they hate themselves for them. Yeah,
Right.
they really hate themselves. And and I forgot who said it, but I heard they say, I wish I could quote who said it, but that pain plus acceptance is pain. Pain minus acceptance is suffering.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what happens, that because we're fighting our issues, we're really, really suffering. And
Right.
that's really what suffering is. But if we can meet our problems and say, okay, meet our pain and say, okay, this is it. This is where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's just pain, and then we can learn how to deal with it. But I
Right.
find that a lot of the work is helping people move away from hating and not accepting and fighting their
Right.
reality of what's going on. And until we really move away from all that criticism and all that, negativity towards the issue, that takes a little while until we can actually
Mm-hmm.
do the work.
Right.
Uh, so to me, yes. And then once they have that language, then already like whatever comes their way, they're meeting it with a much kinder, softer, energy. Because it's
Mm-hmm.
not what we do, but it's how we do it,
Right. Right.
what energy we're doing it. So yes, when you say graduate, I'll be honest, Gila, people have a really hard time graduating therapy.
Yeah.
Hard time. People definitely graduate from weekly therapy.
Okay.
Most definitely. And usually my clients wean off to every other week and then to once a month. But my clients, they always come back. You know what I mean? At some point, they're going to pop back in because life is ever evolving.
Right.
You know, clients through single, engaged, married, baby two,
Right. Right.
stages of development and different issues that arise. So people do graduate from weekly therapy, but my door is always open, and they could always pop back in for people pop back in for a session. Something got, I get this all the time. Can I get a session? Something got activated in my marriage, or can I have a session? One of my kids are making me nuts.
Right.
And it's just a session, not long-term ongoing therapy, but it's a session.
I feel
So
like, yeah, I feel like we did, this is already like our third or fourth podcast. So I'm just remembering that um, from the first time that we recorded, you said something about that, like that I'm trying to remember, sorry. What did talk about?
I definitely can't remember.
Oh,
I don't know.
what I asked you that like why IFS? And you said because you wanted to have some sort of like framework or structure. So I
Yes.
feel like obviously the people who come to you want that framework or structure. So no,
I don't know.
or they
I
like
mean,
it, or they like it because
yeah,
they
I
see
don't
it.
think they always know. I don't think they always know. Listen, therapy is a shidduch, Gila. Therapy is
Right,
such a shidduch.
right.
Like, it's two human beings in a room, and you have to vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Shidduch, like anything else, and doesn't make a therapist better or worse, or a client better or worse. But like, I really believe therapy is a shidduch, and people could trigger people in ways that it's really about them.
Right, right,
Someone can be mean, I remind them of their mother or something, and that triggers them.
right,
I don't know. Like, who
right.
knows? We all have energies to us.
It's
And I
true.
really learned that. Yeah, that therapist. I don't know. People do come for IFS now because IFS is such a rave and such a,
Right,
like,
right. Yeah,
exciting thing. But no, not 10 years ago. I have clients that, that saw me from 10 years ago, and then like only now realize that I was doing IFS. They had no idea.
right. I remember you saying that
I
you
never
didn't.
talked about it. Yeah.
Right.
It's
That's so
very
interesting.
seamless. For me, it's like seamless.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right, because that's really what spoke to you. So that's what you do. But I'm assuming
Exactly.
that,
It's what to me.
right.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm still assuming that, okay, yeah, it's a shidduch, but also like there's certain modalities of therapy that different people are more drawn to,
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Like, yeah.
even at different
EFT
stages.
versus somatic. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I've heard people tell me that they just really hate like IFS. They think it's like so weird and hippy
Oh, really?
dippy.
I would love to hear about that. People hate
Yeah,
it.
I've heard
Whoa,
that.
it's hippy dippy. It depends on the clinician, Gila. It
Yeah,
depends on the clinician. Every IFS clinician is different.
right,
Some IFS clinicians are hippy dippy. I'm saying they're much more like maybe meditative, and I've had clients ask me to do meditations, and I don't do that in my sessions. I don't
right,
meditate you, but
right.
there must be therapists that do.
Yeah,
And it's closing your eyes, like an IFS, some clinicians are very into closing your eyes, and IFS definitely invites you. You can close your eyes if you want, but you don't have to close your eyes.
right.
It's really, it's interesting because people say that, like, because some people, I guess, focus more on like, does the part have an image? Does the part
Right,
have a
right.
picture? And can you feel it in your body? And everyone, again, every clinician focuses on different ways to meet the part.
Hmm. I'm just thinking like I have seen like I have the same therapist for many years, but I have seen other therapists along the way for other types of things like
Mm,
IFS or EFT or um
nice.
EMDR, right? And like I felt like the personality wasn't a shidduch,
Exactly.
but I still gained from the
That's
modality.
nice. That speaks to you. That speaks to you.
The modality. Like the
No, that
maybe
speaks
this
to you, that who you are, that you're able to gain, even though
uh-huh,
you didn't
uh-huh.
love the shidduch, that you can gain from the person and their modality. And even though, that person wouldn't be your best friend, you could take what they had to offer.
I thought it was more like because of her skill was very good. So I was able to be like, okay, that wasn't a personality match at all, but that's okay.
Right. That's amazing. Yeah. So like, you definitely need to feel safe.
Right. Right.
Like, definitely for IFS, like maybe for some of these other, modalities, there's not much talking going on, but
Right.
you really need to feel safe. That's the main thing, is being able to feel safe and feel very accepted. One of the things I tell my clients, and I invite a lot of feedback between me and the client, and they say, like, I've heard it's evidence-based that the most amounts of feedback in, the therapy room proves to make the most successful therapy, because essentially it's a relationship.
Hmm.
So I really love when my clients have the courage to tell me what wasn't good for them or what didn't work for them, or make different requests that are important for them.
Feedback to you, like how the therapy is
Yeah,
going, how they're yeah,
yeah.
I've heard
Session.
that. Yeah.
How was session? How was a session for you?
Right. So Rachel Tuckman, like is a therapist, and she posts a lot on Instagram, and she does like AMAs, like Ask Me Anything, and people ask a lot
Oh,
of
wow. Ask me anything. It's
yeah,
cool.
yeah, it's very cool. You don't
Love
know about
that.
the Instagram world.
I don't know Instagram. So, and you can't even like get Instagram. You don't have Instagram.
It's
Doesn't
good.
let
Don't,
you.
yeah, just stay away from
I
it.
should
But
stay that way. Sheila.
yeah, yes, keep it that way. But it's cool because it does a lot of education of like actual therapy, like what kind of like what you're doing. That like people say like, do I need to like my therapist? Of course you have to like your therapist. Or people say like,
Yes.
what should I do if I'm feeling stuck with my therapist? She's just right. Tell your therapist, and like people, I do encourage clients to do that with me and with therapists because it's like it's like I guess they say that like there's um like what happens in the therapy world is like a microcosm for what how you interact outside of the therapy room. Is that a
So
thing?
it's possible. Yeah, it's a thing. Yeah, it's a thing. Um, it is a thing. Yeah, listen, like in IFS, we're so not like analytical in that way. It's like very
Right.
like like
Cerebral?
psychoanalysis.
Is that the right word?
It's like it's no, it's not necessarily cerebral either. IFS,
Okay.
it's actually not so cerebral and it's
Okay.
not so analytical. It's very like just really being in the present with
Uh-huh.
people and their parts. So like, yes, if a part shows up in my office, there is an understanding that this is a microcosm of other things that likely this part shows up with other people.
Hmm.
But I think also an understanding that therapy it's different. So parts may show up in the therapy room that wouldn't show up elsewhere.
Right.
Perhaps. I don't know. I try to move away from assumptions and just really ask. A lot of curiosity. I would just ask my client, like, is this familiar to you? Do you see yourself doing this anywhere else?
Hmm.
Does it feel different? I'd probably just be really curious. I think
Hmm.
assumptions are very dangerous.
Hmm.
Uh, like we don't know, and we make up so many stories.
Right.
Brene Brown, always making up stories.
Right. Right.
So much safer to ask, and just get feedback and to try to create enough safety where your client can tell you what they feel.
Hmm.
And the client, I think there's two things that, it's important to use your time well, just to speak to those parts, I think is really being able to tell a therapist what you need,
Right.
like really being able to articulate what is important for you and what you would like to get out of the session. I think like using your time to think about how the session would be helpful is really helping the therapist. The
Right.
ability and be able to say like, can we spend time today on, I guess in your case, probably Gila, it's probably all about their body and their food, right? But whichever elements of it they're coming in about.
Right.
So like I'm assuming that, they're gonna come in and say, we talk about, Yontif, the upcoming holiday or whatever it is, whatever they want to talk about, but coming in with something a little bit more focused
Hmm.
um, for the client. And I think when clients come in, a little more empty, it's also something to notice just what happened over the week, what happened that you came in, not thinking about anything. Sometimes that you learn that clients kind of shut it off during the week. I think
Right.
a lot of the success of therapy happens over the week between sessions.
Right.
When you start to notice that you're hearing your therapy and the meta messages over the week, it's so major because you want the therapy to land in different ways. You want to be
Right.
able to hear, like, oh, right, we spoke about that in therapy. Oh, yeah, oh, that's what she meant. Oh, right, I want to bring this to my therapist and let her know.
Right.
It's those moments between therapy. That's why when people come in and they say, like, let's meet twice a week. Let's meet 3 times a week. I just want to do this already. I want to get this done. I want to finish the issue. It doesn't work that way. You
Interesting.
can't on speed.
Right.
Doesn't work.
Right. I've heard something interesting that really has been interesting to think about that um people say that like people rely I've heard this in like my WhatsApp chats with other dietitians, therapists, whatever, that people rely too much on their therapist and that's why they don't graduate because they don't want to do because it's too hard to do the work. Not that they don't want to, everyone wants to, I'm assuming, but that was really interesting to me. That's why I do offer like every week or every other week because I do find that some people really do need like 2 weeks to process the information and practice it versus and some people really do need every week and some people really do need twice a week in the beginning, which is a lot. But
Yes, totally. Yeah. I mean, again, I don't think I'm biased, but I do feel like IFS clinicians are less likely to create dependency
mhm,
because it's so much about people with themselves.
mhm,
Like an IFS therapist you're not in the room so much. There's not a lot of talking from the therapist. There's not a lot of expertise from the therapist's part. It's a lot of guiding the client within themselves.
mhm,
So what they're taking is really learning more about themselves, which they could take home with them. Really not so much about the clinician. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I know, again, this is like one of the things about therapy, like you can never leave and you're so dependent on a therapist. I don't know. I know a small percentage of IFS therapists, but the ones that I know and I've trained and I work with, I feel like they're not creating that dependency, honestly.
What
And I
about the
think
people that like don't remember what you talked about in session? Is that like because they just don't write it down or because they really don't remember?
I think parts really shut it off.
Mm,
I think that that's very like important information for a clinician to recognize that people, if someone's not remembering, because naturally when you spend 50 minutes on yourself, you're talking about things that are important, which again is really a clinician's responsibility to make sure that the therapy is being used appropriately and you're
right,
not wasting time with random curious questions about like recipes
right,
and allowing clients to just literally waste their time.
right,
I think the ability to really hone in and really make sure the client's using the time what they want to use the time, like
right,
contracting. Do you want to use 45 minutes on the recipe on the apple
right.
cobbler? They say yes, and then that's great. How you dice your apples and the size, but otherwise, I
You're
don't
funny,
recommend
Shira.
that.
Right.
But, but where was I even going? I got stuck in the apple cobbler. Um,
Are you making apple cobbler for Shabbos?
no, I should be
No.
though. I love apple crisp. No, I'm not. But it is Thursday actually, so it would make
Yeah,
sense. But
right, right.
like Thursday night by me. Yeah, no. So I definitely think that's clinician's responsibility. But in terms of remembering, I think that when we're using the time on things that are really important to us, and especially in the IFS work, like it's such mindful, laser-like work.
Yeah.
It's hard to forget. Like when it's your life and it's something that you're working on, and your sacred parts,
Hmm.
people usually remember like you're spending an entire, hour on the confrontational part or on the socially anxious part or on the OCD part. Like it usually does impact over the week
Hmm.
because it's experiential, session that the brain waves already get wired, with new neurons. So
Hmm.
it really makes a difference. Like one good IFS session really impacts a week.
Hmm.
So it would surprise me if a client kept coming back in and saying she has no recollection of last week's session. I would wonder about that part. Like if
Hmm.
parts are shut off or there was too much pain to remember,
Hmm.
maybe we could kind of re-regulate throughout the week or at the end of the session. Like I'm very into consolidating the work before we actually end, like the second before we end.
Right.
1 minute so I get back to themselves.
Do you give them like weekly goals? Like, oh, like you're gonna, no.
I'm not into weekly goals because again, it's very agendized. It's like it makes it seem like therapy is like has homework.
Right.
I think it's like that. Like we're working on ourselves on Maybe Shana. Like we're not
Right. Right.
really about that. That's certain modalities do that.
Right.
Uh, the greatest homework, sorry about that. The greatest homework that I encourage my clients is the invitation of noticing. Noticing is so major. It's really
Hmm.
50% change because I could
Right.
come in and tell my therapist. It's so interesting. We spoke about that part of me that's shy. I recognized it 5 times this week.
Hmm.
You know, or that part of me that shuts down. It only happens, my father-in-law, blah blah blah. Like I think being able to notice is such a major thing because it's so much self-awareness.
Right.
So if anything, because clients love homework. So when clients ask, if they ask for homework, I usually just say, try to notice what we spoke about,
Right.
track it, you know, and bring it back in.
That's funny that people love homework. Um,
People love parts that love homework, yes, because they think it's
really.
going to make the change come faster.
So interesting. That's really interesting. Because
Yeah, we all
yeah,
want change, we want it now.
of course, duh, I do.
Of course,
Um, my
of
work
course.
is just a little different because I do follow, like I am teaching intuitive eating and I mean, quote unquote counseling, not that I'm a therapist, but there's like teaching and counseling is different. But um
So
IFS is
different.
just really cool, honestly, because like I would in my head, I would think people don't want homework. But maybe like the type A people are like, so what should I do now? And that would be
So
like
much of
stressful.
that.
Yeah.
So much of that, Gila. So now
Right.
what? That's the
Right.
greatest question. So
Right.
now we felt that pain. Now what do I do? Now what?
Right.
As if there's like magic.
Right. It's
A lot
true.
of a lot of change is acceptance. It's the road of a change and acceptance at the same time. Acceptance is one of the such an important ingredient to change.
I've heard that what you can't accept, you can't change. But you can,
Exactly.
is that an IFS term?
No, but
Oh,
it's a good one.
I know. I learned that from Peril, Abramowitz, who I always quote, but you cannot accept, not change.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's a good one.
So it's makes so much sense. Yeah, it makes so much sense. Yeah.
Maybe we'll label that as we'll name it what you cannot change, what you cannot accept, you can't change. Um, I wanted
Beautiful.
to say one
Love
more.
that.
Yeah, I really appreciate you explaining this, and I feel a little better about my own therapy.
Oh,
And
I'm so glad.
um
I hope this is helpful for people.
I think it
Yeah.
is. I think it is because it's like like what I was actually going to say is that like I think I do remember feeling like that in at a certain point in like my therapy journey that like okay now like fix me. No, but what should I like I'm going to die from this pain. So like what should I do? Or like
Right.
yeah, it's
Right. That's
really
so right.
it's like
Yes, that's really,
you know?
yeah. I mean, again, IFS managers are afraid they'll die from pain,
Right.
but we'd work with that before we get to any pain. So hopefully by the time we're in IFS, we're meeting pain, people are not. There's not so much fear.
Right.
That's the whole thing is we're so, so afraid of pain. People are, human beings are so afraid of pain.
Right.
Yeah. They say, I think it's Michael Singer who says pain is the price of freedom. That once you
Mm,
could feel pain, you're free. But we
right.
live our lives organizing around pain. And
Right.
that unfortunately creates so much more pain. But just
Right.
recognizing that we're adults, we could feel pain. It's okay.
Yeah,
You
totally.
know?
It's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Shira. This was amazing.
Okay.
You'll come on
Thank you,
again.
Eli.
Sure.
Would love to.
Okay, have a great day. Have a good Travis.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.